name is Jason Thompson. I'm a Vice President with Emergency Products and Research of Kent, Ohio. Today we're going to be going over traction split training. We're going to be utilizing it's called the Optimum traction device, or the OTD. This is a special model developed specifically for Department of Defense, meaning that it's a very compliant product, so that all components of this product are actually made in the United States. I'm going to go over some of the features of this, but again, this video is not so much a marketing pitch as it is more of a training video for help make sure that we all are on the same page with regards to managing fracture management. So what I'm going to go ahead is I'm going to go ahead and get this set up for you. Some other things you're going to see in this video. I'm also going to be utilizing the SAM pelvic sling, and this happens to be the SAM pelvic sling 2. So just in case I don't get a chance to cover that during the video, we'll make sure we get that covered extensively. As far as the trainer itself, this is a product manufactured by Simulades. It is a traction splint trainer. I'm also going to be utilizing what we're called a neuro sleeve. This is a sleeve that basically essentially goes on the extremity that allows us to document our neurovascular findings and all of our progress. And then we're also going to be utilizing the Insta Splint 2. This is the large vacuum splint package set. So we'll be utilizing that today too to stabilize the fracture for transportation. So with that, kind of walk through some things here. So obviously what we're looking here is we have a suspected femur fracture. So in this case, we're going to be looking at a mid-shaft fracture. We're going to assume it's a displaced fracture. Let's say that it was a fall from height. So what we're looking for is we have a patient. In this case, he's alert and he's oriented. He's in severe pain. We're looking to look at the thigh, looking for swelling. We're looking for displacement, crepitus, anything to help me understand, or I highly suspect that we actually have a femur fracture. The next thing we're going to do, and the most important thing, is actually determining whether or not there's any neurovascular compromise. In addition, this guy only has one leg. Otherwise, I would be doing some limb length measurements as well. So we'd also be interested in determining whether there's a limb length discrepancy. So in this case, what we're going to do is we have the ability to evaluate, to determine whether or not we have a pulse. Right, so we're going to go ahead and check popliteal. We're also going to go ahead, we're going to have him wiggle his toes if he's able to. We're going to have him push against my hand. We're going to have him pull his foot back. Right, we're also going to check for pulses in his feet. We're going to look for color changes in the toes. We're going to see whether or not we have good circulation in the toes as well. And so we're going to document that thoroughly. If we happen to have a compromise, and we see that we have some limb length discrepancies, meaning that the legs, right, are not equal for some reason. In the event that we do see a shortening in the right leg versus the left leg, one of the things we're obviously going to do is we think that there might be some shortening at the femur fracture itself, but we also want to consider the fact that we also may have a dislocation at the hip too. So with that, what we're going to do is we're going to assume that we have some neurovascular compromise. And when I do a bilateral exam, he's got strong flexion. We have good circulation on this, but we're completely diminished on this side. So we're going to go ahead and try to do our best to restore that. One of the things we've also found that we need to really take into consideration is, and we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this video, is the reason I brought the pelvic binder out is that one of the things we really need to consider is that the energy and force required to actually fracture this femur is enough to actually do a lot of damage to the for the pelvis, for the hips, and we also can see some lumbar injuries as well. So we want to highly suspect those as too. And what's interesting is that when you're dealing with a femur fracture, there actually could be referred pain in the genitourinary area, abdominal area as well. So we want to make sure that we really kind of take care of those and don't miss them in our exam. So I'm going to go ahead, and while I have the opportunity right now, I'm going to go ahead and put a pelvic binder on. So we've done, we've checked, we have iliac crest, and we're doing our exam on there. He's hurting all throughout. So it's really kind of it's really difficult for me to rule out that we have a fracture in here. So we also want to be very concerned about internal hemorrhage here and internal hemorrhage here. I mean, obviously those are the life threats in this situation. It's not just about pain management. Now, unfortunately, I don't have somebody else to help me right now, but I'm going to be very cautious in how I do this. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to place the pelvic binder up under leg. I'm bringing this up. Now I have, this trainer has suction cups, so you have to forgive me. I'm going to lift this up a little bit. Ordinarily, we try not to do that. And I'm going to bring this up across. Now, for those who haven't had a chance to work with a pelvic sling or a pelvic binder, I encourage you to get yours out and to work on that and get used to it. Now, in this case, what's really nice about the SAM pelvic sling is it has such great safety features in here that it makes the guesswork out. So you're gonna just pull this, and you're gonna pull it until you actually have these clips that pop out, and you'll hear it here in a second. There we go. That's giving us a nice strong foundation for us to start working on as we put our splint on. So again, we're using a product called the OTD, and this one's actually known, right, our project right now is the Optimum Traction Device, or OTD Warrior, or OTDW. This is the boot hitch, but in this case, we're not gonna need it. In this instance, we already have the foot exposed. So ordinarily, if we had a shoe on here, we would be carefully removing that so we can be able to assess our neurovascular function. We'd also be exposing all this area as well. So we're fortunate that this guy is already prepared for us. So I'm gonna go ahead and assemble my pole. And I'm gonna set that over here to the side. At this point, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna place the neuro sleeve, as we're calling it. I'm gonna place this actually on the foot. And this neuro sleeve allows me to basically open it up. It may look familiar to you. It's actually from a product called the PD sleeve. The inventor of that is Stan, and Stan has actually been working with me closely on this and actually developing what's called the neuro sleeve. So you may see it looks very familiar to what you may see on a quarterback's arm from football. So, and this will allow us to actually utilize to write in here and take our notes. Now at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and get everything started to set up. So I'm gonna take my upper thigh system. Again, these are the receivers. The receivers are on both sides. My receiver is gonna go up underneath my leg. And I'm gonna work that up into the D-rings. And I'm gonna take this and I'm actually gonna bring that down so it's nice and tight. Now at this point, I don't have to worry about it being so tight yet. It just has to be in place. And we'll make some subtle adjustments on that if necessary. And so at this point, we're gonna take the ankle hitch, open that up, and then we're gonna place this underneath the ankle. We're gonna bring this up, around just like that. We're gonna place this on here. Now there's a green tab on this side, so we're gonna pull that down tight. I refer to it as a relish, and pull that down tight. And then you'll see the red I refer to as ketchup and yellow as mustard. I like food. So this goes on here just like that. Now at this point, we're gonna go ahead. Most important part of this is actually understanding the appropriate length necessary to achieve this. And this pole extends out, needs to extend out at least one pole section beyond the foot. And then, so in this case, with our guy being of height, so this is gonna actually be a perfect setup. So I'm gonna go ahead and load my pole into my receiver. And then we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna load the dart into the mustard, or mustard onto the dart. And I'm gonna cinch that up using my ketchup red tab. At this point, everything's in line. We'll make sure we're midline on the leg. And then we're gonna take the strap here and we're going to come up. Now this is referred to as a knee strap. It's gonna go over. Now again, people will say, well, I'm concerned about placing straps or anything over the knee. All this is just holding this in place, right? So we're not putting a lot of tension on the knee at all. And then we're gonna take the other thigh, the thigh strap, and we're gonna take that around, and we're gonna put this over here. Again, this is just to hold it in place, but we want to try, even though we're going over or near the wound site, it's not such much a problem. We're going to be able to pack ice on there. We're going to be able to put compression dressings and things like that, because again, we're looking and we're trying to control internal hemorrhage. So additional compression is actually a good thing. So we're going to take the shin strap. Shin strap's going to go down here, and then just, again, holding that in place. So at this point, just like we've always learned, any action requires a reevaluation. So we want to check again and see whether or not we've had any improvements. Wiggle your toes, push, pull, or have we improved, or have we actually regressed from our baseline. At this point, we're going to document our findings, accordingly, and then we're going to proceed. So at this point, I have not had any improvement. I've not had any diminishment, so we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna apply traction. In this case, I remind you that only a single rescuer. Ideally I would have two. Somebody who's pulling manual traction and then utilizing the mechanical traction of the device to assume the mechanical traction. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna place my hand on the pole, and I'm slowly going to start to pull traction. And as I do that, one of the things that is happening on a traction splinter is there's a very visible line where the overlap, the one section overlaps the other. And as you're pulling traction, you can actually physically see, or visibly see, where the actual traction occurring. So what's happening again is that the foot is being pulled away from the hips or the pelvis. So you're pulling, as you're pulling traction down here, you're driving the pole that direction, and you're pushing the foot away from the pelvis. So as you're doing that, you're pulling the two fractured sections back into their natural anatomical alignment, which is important because it's going to help in reducing the amount of internal hemorrhage. It's going to help to restore a vascular flow to the lower extremities, so you have good arterial flow going down to the toes and good venous flow coming back to the heart. And then that together is going to improve the nerve function and help to prevent what we call compartment syndrome at a later time. So I'm going to go ahead and reevaluate. In this case, my patient isn't in extreme agony, still in extreme discomfort, but he does tell me that for some reason it feels a little bit better. So that's important for me. We're not always going to get that, but that seems important to me. So I'm going to go ahead and reassess. In this case, it's really difficult for him to push down, but I can feel an effort. It feels difficult for him to pull up because of the pain, but I can feel effort. I touch his toes, and he can actually tell me which toe I'm touching. So at this point, I'm gonna go ahead, limb length evaluation, determine whether or not we've restored the limb length. We're pretty close. My patient feels a little bit better. Check my pulse rates, my heart rates, blood pressure, those reevaluate, and make a determination to determine whether or not my patient is in better shape now, after traction, than he was before, and kind of make a clinical decision as to whether or not you should do more or should we stop at this point. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and stop because I feel that I have improvement. I've stabilized this. I'm going to continue to monitor this, obviously very aggressively, to see whether I have continued swelling. Now, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and put this back on here. I wanted to just take it off so you can see that. I'm going to go ahead and take my boot hitch and my empty bag, and I'm going to set these aside. Now, at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and get this patient ready to transport. So this was the primary injury, right? This was a life threat. It wasn't just a pain issue. It truly was a life threat. We have potential to lose 1 liter up to 2 liters of blood in this cavity, which is significant, right? It's enough to actually to put the patient into shock, and may not be reversible by our own means. Now that we've stabilized them, we may want to think about pain management, but yet still being very careful with the use of our pain management, because we also don't want to mask compartment syndrome. Compartment syndrome being the deficit in the lower extremity caused by impairments proximal to the injury. So we'd have distal injury that needs to be considered because of the compromise here. So with our use of pain management medications, we can actually mask this, which is a bad thing. So we want to be really careful with that. I'm going to set this aside and place this on the leg. So at this point, I'm going to have my second rescuer would help me, but in this case, we don't have that luxury. I'm going to be as gentle as I possibly can, and we're going to move this up here into place. So again, the beads are all ready to in position. They're all evenly spread out and distributed. So I'm going to go ahead and unloosen my Velcro straps. I'm going to take my Velcro straps and I'm going to go around the leg. And then we're going to come up and we're going to do the same thing. Go. And these are not to be tight. Just holding this in place. Now I want to keep this exposed in here so I can be able to put some nice ice packs in here so we can help control the swelling. I also want to think about my ability to actually reevaluate my pulse, right? So I have done that, and I'm going to go ahead and put these on, finish that up. And then as I come down to the foot, I want to make sure that I don't fully cover the foot. So I can continue to reevaluate that. And you have the ability to actually fold these back if you need to. In this case, the patient's tall enough that my foot is hanging out there enough. And that's it. So at this point, we're gonna go ahead and take the pump. I'm gonna place the male ends into the female of the valve, place it nice and tight, and at this point I'm gonna start to draw out air, and we're using the vacuum pump. So at this point, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Feeling resistance, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop. At this point, go ahead and evaluate this, and it's now nice and rigid. So what I've done is not only have I further stabilized the leg, but I've also given it protection during transport, as we know, especially if you're coming up from a cliff face or any type of a trail environment, or even going through doorways. Obviously, we're all really tired at that point because we've done a lot to get to this patient. We've gone through a lot to get him to this point. We're tired. We really need to think about actually protecting that leg, so if we bang into things, we're not causing secondary injuries. And go ahead and remove this. We're gonna place this on there. If we have a spine board, we're gonna place them on a spine board to make the transport easy. If we have a Stokes basket, we're gonna place them in a basket, and we're gonna go ahead and transport them out of there. So at this point, our patient's ready to go. We're gonna do one last final neurovascular assessment. We're gonna document our findings, and we're gonna get them to safety. I really hope that was helpful. It's one of the things that I really wish that I had as I was coming up through the ranks, and I hope that you guys appreciate it. And if there's any questions at all, do not hesitate to let us know. Thank you so much.